The chain scraped against stone as the warrior collapsed to his knees. Blood streaked his gray skin, darker where the plasma burns had seared through scales. His breath came in ragged gasps that echoed through the holding chamber, each one a struggle against shattered ribs. The guards had been efficient, brutal, professional. Captain Sarah Chin stood motionless in the observation alcove, her combat armor still warm from the firefight that had brought him here. Through the reinforced glass, she watched the alien's chest heave with pain he refused to voice. 37 hours ago, his strike team had breached Station Kepler's outer defenses. 17 humans had died in the assault. Now he was the only one left. "The Queen approaches," the station AI announced. Sarah's jaw tightened. Queen Vishkara of the Jin Collective had traveled 6 parsecs to witness this interrogation personally. The war had raged for 3 years across 12 systems, and this warrior was the first high-ranking Jin officer they had captured alive. Intelligence suggested he commanded the fleet that had glassed Europa, that had vaporized the colony where Sarah's sister had been raising her children. The doors opened without sound. Queen Vishkara entered the observation chamber like winter itself, her crystalline exoskeleton refracting the harsh station lights into fragments of cold blue. She was smaller than Sarah had expected, barely reaching her shoulder, but presence had nothing to do with size. 2 royal attendants flanked her, their sensor arrays sweeping the room in continuous assessment of threat and protocol. "Captain Chin." The Queen's voice resonated through a translator embedded in her thorax, each word precisely calibrated. "Your restraint is noted. Many would have executed him immediately." Sarah kept her eyes forward. "Military protocol requires interrogation of command-level prisoners, Your Majesty." "Protocol." Vishkara moved to the glass, her reflective eyes studying the warrior below. "How convenient that human protocol aligns with mercy today." The warrior's head lifted. His eyes, triple-pupiled and, the color of old bronze, found the Queen through the transparent barrier. Something passed across his face, too quick for Sarah to interpret. Not fear. Recognition, perhaps. Or resignation. "He knows you're here," Sarah said. "Commander Rethan served in my personal fleet before his reassignment." Vishkara's antennae twitched, a gesture Sarah's cultural briefings had identified as contemplation. "He was among our finest tacticians. Ruthless when necessary. Honorable within the bounds of war. The people on Europa might disagree about the honor part. Your species builds colonies on worlds you cannot properly defend, then calls it murder when war comes to your doorstep." The Queen's tone carried no malice, only observation. "We warned your government multiple times. The expansion into the Kelver Expanse violated the Threshold Accords." Sarah's hands curled into fists at her sides. "Those accords were signed by a government that no longer exists. The Unity Council dissolved 8 years before the war. Then, who speaks for humanity now, Captain? Who bears responsibility for your species' actions?" The question hung between them, unanswered because there was no good answer. The war had started over territory disputes and resource rights, but it had metastasized into something uglier. Both sides had their atrocities now, their unpaid debts of blood. Below, Commander Rethan struggled to his feet. The chains binding his wrists were rated for 10 times his body weight, but he pulled against them anyway, testing. His legs trembled with the effort of standing. Fresh blood seeped from the wound in his side, where a plasma round had punched through his armor. "He's stronger than his injuries suggest," Vishkara observed. "He killed 4 of my soldiers before we subdued him," Sarah said. "Good people. 2 were supposed to rotate home next month. And he watched 7 of his own team die in your corridors. Warriors he had trained personally. Led for years." The Queen's antennae swept forward. "Loss weighs equally on both sides of any conflict, Captain." That is the terrible mathematics of war. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Sarah checked her wrist display. The interrogation team was ready. Dr. Morrison had prepared the neurological scanner, and the legal observers had assembled. Everything was in place for a procedure that would extract every tactical secret from Rethvan's mind, leaving his higher cognitive functions permanently damaged. It was legal under the Emergency Powers Act. It was necessary for the war effort. It would save human lives by revealing fleet positions and strategic planning. It was torture by another name. Your people are waiting, Bishkara said. You should proceed with your protocol. Sarah activated her calm. Dr. Morrison, stand by. We have a complication. The Queen's head tilted slightly, an almost human gesture of curiosity. In the holding chamber below, Rethvan's voice suddenly cut through the silence. The translator AI rendered his words in flat, mechanical English. I formally request mercy killing under the Kelver Accords, Article 17. I invoke my right to honorable death rather than mental subjugation. The words struck the chamber like a hammer. Vishkara's entire body went rigid, her crystalline armor flashing through a rapid spectrum of colors Sarah's briefings hadn't covered. Article 17 was written for prisoners of the Jin Collective, the Queen said softly. It should not apply here. But Rethvan had spoken the formal cadence perfectly, the ancient ritual words that preceded the request. And Sarah knew, with cold certainty, that this was the complication that would define everything that followed. The warrior wasn't just asking for death. He was forcing a choice that would reveal who they were, human and Jin alike, when honor and necessity collided. The Queen watched the warrior below. Sarah watched the Queen. And, in the holding chamber, Rethvan waited for an answer that would determine far more than just his fate. The silence stretched like a blade between them, sharp enough to cut the future itself. Dr. Morrison's voice crackled through Sarah's calm. Captain, the neurological scanner is calibrated. We're ready when you give the word. Sarah didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the warrior below, on the way his chest rose and fell with controlled breathing despite the pain that must have been screaming through every nerve. He had positioned himself in the center of the chamber, chains pulled taut, spine straight, ready for judgment. Your silence speaks volumes, Captain Shin. Vishkara's reflection ghosted across the glass between them. You are considering his request. I'm considering what it costs us if I grant it. Sarah's voice came out harder than she intended. He has information that could end this war months earlier. Save thousands of lives on both sides. And you want me to execute him because he asked politely? The Accords exist because there are lines even war should not cross. The Queen's antennae swept back, flattening against her carapace in what Sarah recognized as distress. Your neurological extraction will leave him alive but hollow. A shell that breathes but does not think, does not remember, does not dream. In Jin culture, this is a fate worse than any death. In human culture, we call it necessary sacrifice. Do you? Vishkara turned fully to face her, and Sarah met those alien eyes despite every instinct screaming to look away. Then, why does your hand hesitate over the calm button, Captain? Why have you not already given the order? Because Sarah had seen the extraction process once before on a Jin prisoner they captured during the Battle of Titan's Gate. She had watched through glass similar to this as the machines mapped every neural pathway, copying and erasing in the same terrible instant. The prisoner had survived. Technically. His body continued its biological functions under medical supervision, but everything that made him a person had been scooped out and cataloged in a classified database. The intelligence gained had been tactically significant. It had helped human forces anticipate a major offensive, saving a mining colony in the asteroid belt. The cost-benefit analysis had been clear, straightforward, justified. Sarah still saw his empty eyes sometimes when she tried to sleep. "The law is explicit," she said finally. "Enemy combatants captured during active hostilities may be subjected to necessary intelligence gathering by any means available. And yet you cite law to me when we both know law is simply codified power." Vishkara moved closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I have executed prisoners, Captain Chen. I have ordered actions that haunt me. But I have never pretended these choices were anything other than what they were. Do not hide behind protocol when what you truly face is a moral precipice." Below, Rethan spoke again. "I killed 17 of your people in the station attack. I commanded the bombardment of Europa. I have waged this war with every skill I possess." His translator rendered the words with mechanical precision, but something in the underlying harmonics suggested fierce pride. "I do not beg for mercy from weakness. I demand the right to die with my mind intact because I have earned that much through service to my queen and my people." "Earn?" Sarah repeated. "You think murder earns you anything?" "I think warriors understand warriors, regardless of species." Rethan's bronze eyes found hers through the glass. "You wear the scars of combat on your armor. You carry yourself with the weight of command. You know what it means to give orders that send others to die. We are not so different, you and I. We simply serve different flags. The people on Europa weren't warriors. They were families, researchers, children, and the Jin colonies your fleet destroyed in the Threshold Nebula held families as well. Hatchlings who never saw their first molt. We could count atrocities like currency, Captain, but we would both run out of breath before we ran out of grievances." Sarah's calm chirped again. This time it was Admiral Kowalski, her voice tight with barely controlled impatience. "Captain Chen, I'm watching this feed from command. What's the delay? Execute the extraction protocol immediately. That's a direct order." The Queen's antennae twitched at the sound of the Admiral's voice. "Your superior officer sounds displeased." "My superior officer is thinking tactically. It's her job." Sarah's finger hovered over the calm acknowledgement. One press. One word. The machines would activate, and, in 6 hours, they would have every secret Rethan possessed. Fleet positions. Supply lines. Strategic weaknesses. The Jun Collective's entire military apparatus laid bare. All it would cost was one more hollow shell breathing in a medical base somewhere. "Captain!" Rethan's voice cut through her spiral of thought. "I know what you are considering. I know the value of what I carry in my mind. But understand this, if you take it by force, you prove everything my people believe about humanity. That you are barbarians wearing the costume of civilization. That you cannot be trusted. Cannot be negotiated with. Cannot ever be at peace with." "He speaks truth," Vishkara said quietly. "The Jin Collective watches this moment, Captain Chen. Not through surveillance, but through what it represents. I came here to witness what humanity would choose when law and conscience diverge." Sarah's hand dropped from the calm. "You're testing us. I am witnessing you. There is a difference." The Queen returned her attention to the glass, to the warrior bleeding in chains below. "Commander Rethan, and I disagree on many things. He believes this war can be won through superior tactics and will. I believe it can only end through understanding between our peoples. But we agree on this. How you treat your prisoners reveals your true nature. Then you already know what we are," Sarah said bitterly. "You've seen our war record. The things we've done. I have seen what humans do in desperation and fear. What I have not seen is what you do when given time to choose. When the crisis is past and the prisoner is secured and you must decide who you wish to be." Vishkara's crystalline armor pulsed with soft light. "My people have a saying, the blade reveals the metal, but the sheath reveals the society. Anyone can kill in the heat of battle. It takes something else to show restraint when victory is already won. The comm chirped insistently. Admiral Kowalski again, her patience clearly exhausted. Captain Chen, I'm not asking. Initiate extraction in the next 60 seconds or I'm relieving you of command and sending security to do it manually. Rethvan's chains rattled as he shifted his weight. His legs were failing now, the damage too severe to ignore much longer. But he kept his eyes level, kept his breathing controlled. Waiting for judgment with the same disciplined calm he had probably carried into 100 battles. Sarah thought about her sister, about her niece and nephew who had loved the low gravity on Europa, who had sent videos of themselves bouncing around their habitat module, laughing in that pure way children laugh before the world teaches them fear. They had died in the bombardment this warrior had commanded, vaporized so quickly they probably never knew what happened. She thought about the Jin prisoner at Titan's Gate, the one whose mind they had extracted. The intelligence reports showed his information had saved over 3,000 human lives in subsequent battles. A clear victory by any tactical measure. She thought about the look in that prisoner's empty eyes, and wondered if the 3,000 people whose lives were saved would have considered it worth the price if they had to see it themselves. Captain! Admiral Kowalski's voice was ice. 30 seconds. Sarah closed her eyes. When she opened them, she knew what she was going to do, and that it would probably end her career, and that she would do it anyway because some choices couldn't be calculated in cost-benefit ratios or justified by tactical necessity. Dr. Morrison, she said into her comm, her voice steady despite everything. Shut down the neurological scanner. We won't be needing it. The observation chamber went very quiet. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of Rethvan's breathing in the chamber below and the crystalline whisper of the Queen's exoskeleton shifting beside her. Captain Chen, what the hell do you think you're doing? The Admiral's voice exploded through the comm. I gave you a direct. Sarah cut the connection. She would pay for that later, in ways she could barely imagine, but right now the only thing that mattered was the decision crystallizing in her mind with absolute clarity. She turned to face Queen Vishkara directly. Article 17 of the Kelver Accords. I need the exact wording. The Queen's antennae swept forward in what might have been surprise. You would honor a treaty signed between Jin factions? That has no legal standing in human law? I would honor the principle behind it. If I'm going to refuse the extraction, I need to understand what I'm agreeing to. Vishkara was silent for a long moment, her alien eyes studying Sarah with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then she spoke, her voice taking on the formal cadence of ritual. Article 17 grants a captured warrior of sufficient rank the right to request honorable execution rather than interrogation that would compromise tactical secrets or damage mental integrity. The request must be witnessed by a representative of their command structure. If granted, death must be swift and without unnecessary suffering. And if refused, then interrogation proceeds. But the refusal is noted in historical record. It becomes part of how that conflict is remembered, how the participants are judged by future generations. Sarah looked down at Rethvan, who had managed to remain standing despite everything. His bronze eyes held hers with fierce pride and something else. Hope, perhaps. Or simply the desire to end this on his own terms rather than having everything stripped away piece by piece. If I grant his request, Sarah said slowly, working through the implications, we lose critical intelligence. The war continues. More people die on both sides because we don't have the tactical information to end it quickly. Yes, Vishkara agreed. And if I refuse, we extract everything he knows. We gain a significant advantage. But we prove to your people that humans cannot be trusted to honor the basic dignity of prisoners. Also, yes, There's no good answer here, is there? No choice that doesn't cost lives and compromise principles. Welcome to command, Captain Chin, where every decision carries weight, and there is rarely a path that does not require sacrifice. The Queen's voice held something that might have been sympathy. But understand this, the choice you make now will echo beyond this room, beyond this war. It will help determine whether our peoples can ever truly coexist, or whether we are doomed to fight until one side or both are destroyed. The door to the observation chamber slid open. Security personnel filed in, led by a stone-faced commander Sarah didn't recognize. They were here to remove her, to take control of the situation, to ensure the Admiral's orders were carried out regardless of one captain's moral crisis. "Stand down, Captain Chin," the security commander said, his hand resting on his sidearm. "You're relieved of duty pending court-martial for insubordination and sabotage of critical intelligence operations. Step away from the controls." Sarah didn't move. Her hand found the manual override panel beside the observation window, fingers hovering over the buttons that would determine Rethvan's fate. She could grant his request with a simple code sequence, or she could step aside and let the extraction proceed as ordered. In the chamber below, Rethvan's legs finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees again, chains clanking, but his eyes never left the observation window. Never left her, waiting for her to choose who she was, who humanity would be in this moment. Queen Vishkara stepped between Sarah and the security team, her small frame suddenly seeming much larger. "This is a diplomatic situation now, Commander. I formally invoke my status as visiting head of state. Any action taken against Captain Chen in my presence would be considered an act of aggression against the Jin Collective." The security commander hesitated, clearly weighing his orders against the potential for starting an interstellar incident. His hand remained on his weapon, but he didn't draw it. "Your Majesty, with respect, you have no authority on this station." "I have the authority of witness," Vishkara said, her voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "And I am telling you that what happens in this chamber in the next 60 seconds will determine whether there is any possibility of peace between our peoples. Choose carefully, Commander." Sarah's fingers moved across the override panel, entering the authorization code that would give her direct control of the holding chamber. Warning lights flashed as the system registered her access, noted the irregularity, flagged the action for immediate review. None of that mattered anymore. "Commander Rethvan," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber's speakers, "you invoked Article 17 of the Kelver Accords. You requested honorable death rather than mental extraction." The warrior's head lifted. Fresh blood traced lines down his gray skin, but his eyes were clear, aware, waiting. "I'm not going to grant that request," Sarah said. The disappointment that flashed across Rethvan's face was almost physically painful to witness. Behind Sarah, she heard Queen Vishkara's sharp intake of breath, the crystalline rattle of disappointment or perhaps resignation. "But I'm also not going to approve the extraction," Sarah continued. "Instead, I'm going to do something that will probably destroy my career and violate about 17 regulations. I'm going to transfer you to Queen Vishkara's custody under diplomatic protection, to be held as a prisoner of war under the Kelver Accords until such time as formal negotiations can determine your fate." The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos erupted. "You can't do that," the security commander shouted. "You have no authority to transfer prisoners to enemy combatants." "She has the authority of conscience," Vishkara said quietly, but her voice cut through the commotion like a blade. "And I accept custody of Commander Rethvan under the terms she has outlined." Sarah's hands moved across the control panel, executing commands she had no legal right to execute, transferring custody through diplomatic channels that technically didn't exist between warring powers. The system fought her at every step, demanding authorization codes she didn't have, flagging violations faster than she could bypass them. But the chamber doors opened anyway. The locks on Rethan's chains disengaged. Security personnel rushed forward, but Vishkara's attendants moved to block them, their sensor arrays shifting into defensive configurations. For a heartbeat, the observation chamber balanced on the edge of violence, human and Jin forces facing each other with weapons ready. "Stand down," Sarah ordered, her voice carrying the command authority of her rank even if that rank was about to be stripped away. "All security personnel, stand down immediately." "That's a direct order." "You're relieved of duty, Captain. You don't get to give orders." But even as he said it, the security commander's hand moved away from his weapon. He knew an impossible situation when he saw one. In the holding chamber, Rethan struggled to his feet one final time. Two of Vishkara's attendants moved to support him, their movements efficient and, surprisingly, gentle. They guided him toward the exit, toward whatever fate awaited him in Jin custody. He paused at the threshold, looking back at Sarah through the glass. Then he spoke, his voice rough but clear. "Captain Chen, I do not know if what you have done is wisdom or foolishness, but I know it took courage." That means something, even between enemies. Then he was gone, supported by the Queen's attendants, leaving only bloodstains on the floor of the holding chamber and the weight of consequences pressing down on everyone who remained. Admiral Kowalski's voice exploded through every speaker in the observation chamber. "Captain Sarah Chun, you are under arrest for treason, insubordination, and aiding enemy combatants. Security, take her into custody immediately." The security commander moved forward, magnetic restraints ready. Sarah didn't resist. She had known this would happen, had accepted it the moment she made her choice. But before the restraints could close around her wrists, Queen Vishkara spoke one final time. "Captain Chen has committed no treason," the Queen said, her voice resonating with absolute authority. "She has initiated what I am formally declaring to be preliminary peace negotiations between the Jin Collective and the human government. As such, she is acting under diplomatic immunity as my designated human counterpart in these discussions." The security commander froze. "Your Majesty, that's not how diplomatic immunity works. It is now." Vishkara's antennae swept forward, and Sarah recognized the posture as one of challenge. "Unless you wish to declare that humanity rejects peace negotiations? That you prefer continued war to the possibility of finding a better path?" Admiral Kowalski's voice came through the speakers again, but this time there was careful control behind the anger. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, one rogue captain does not represent the human government." "Then send me someone who does," Vishkara replied. "Send me your diplomats, your leaders, your people with authority to negotiate. But understand this, Captain should open a door that has been locked since this war began. What she did was irregular, unauthorized, and absolutely necessary. If humanity wishes to close that door again, you may do so. But you will do it knowing the Jin Collective was willing to talk, and you chose violence instead." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence carried different weight. Possibility instead of threat. Uncertainty instead of inevitable conflict. Sarah stood very still, barely breathing, as the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Her career was over regardless of what happened next. But maybe, just maybe, she had given both sides a chance to step back from the abyss. The security commander's calm chimed. He listened to whoever was speaking, his expression carefully neutral. Then he stepped back, the restraint still unused in his hand. "Captain Chen, you are confined to quarters pending review by the Diplomatic Corps," he said formally. "You are not under arrest at this time." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. She had expected court-martial, prison, possibly execution for treason. Confinement was a gift she hadn't dared hope for. As security escorted her from the observation chamber, Queen Vishkara's voice followed her. "Thank you, Captain, for choosing to be more than what war demanded. For showing that courage sometimes means refusing to do the expedient thing." Sarah didn't respond. Couldn't respond. She simply walked forward, one step at a time, carrying the weight of her choice like armor she would wear for the rest of her life. Behind her, in the holding chamber, Rethvan's blood slowly dried on cold stone. Ahead of her, the future stretched uncertain and dangerous and filled with consequences she couldn't predict. But for the first time since the war began, that future held something it hadn't before, the possibility that warriors could choose something other than the next battle, that enemies could recognize each other's humanity, even across the void of species and culture and bitter history, the possibility of peace. It was fragile and uncertain and might shatter with the next tactical decision or political calculation. But it existed now, called into being by one captain's refusal to let protocol override conscience. As Sarah disappeared down the corridor toward an uncertain fate, Queen Vishkara remained in the observation chamber, her crystalline armor pulsing with light that might have been hope, or might simply have been the reflection of decisions made and consequences accepted. The war would continue. Blood would still be spilled. Grief would still echo across the stars. But a door had opened that could never be fully closed again. And that, in the end, was what courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to create possibility in the face of it, whatever the personal cost might be.